Imagine a holy island, a peaceful center of learning and prayer, suddenly overwhelmed by screaming, axe-wielding warriors who appear from the sea like ghosts. They slaughter the priests, shatter the altars, and vanish with a treasure of gold, silver, and human lives. This wasn't a scene from a fantasy novel. This was the terrifying reality on June 8, 793, at the monastery of Lindisfarne in England. And it was just the beginning. Welcome to 10-Minute History. I'm your host, Jake Sullivan, and today we're diving deep into the 3-century-long saga of the Viking raids on England and Francia, and how this fury of the Northmen didn't just destroy a world but accidentally built a new one. To understand the sheer shock of the Viking Age, we first need to picture the world they were about to shatter. Anglo-Saxon England was a patchwork of rival kingdoms, constantly fighting each other. Its greatest wealth was concentrated in magnificent coastal monasteries, which were completely undefended. To the south, the massive Carolingian Empire of the Franks, founded by Charlemagne, seemed like an unbreakable superpower. But this world was about to collide with a force it was utterly unprepared for. From the fjords of Scandinavia, a people were stirring. They were driven by a hunger for land, a thirst for prestige, and a revolutionary piece of technology that would change the face of warfare. This was the longship. The longship was a masterpiece of naval engineering. It was long, narrow, and incredibly fast, able to cross the open North Sea in just a few days. But its true genius was its shallow draft. A longship could land on almost any sandy beach, allowing warriors to leap out and form a shield wall in minutes. Even more devastatingly, it could navigate far up rivers like the Thames and the Seine, turning these waterways into highways for invasion. It was a strategic weapon that gave the Vikings the ultimate advantages: speed and surprise. Their opponents simply had no way to counter it. And so, the raids began. The first phase was defined by a terrifying tactic known as the strandhogg, which literally means shore hewing. This was the lightning raid, designed for maximum profit with minimum risk. A small fleet would appear without warning, hit a soft target like a monastery, grab all the portable wealth and as many captives as they could, and then disappear back over the horizon before any army could even be assembled. The attack on Lindisfarne in 793 sent a shockwave of horror across Christian Europe. The scholar Alfred, writing from Charlemagne's court, lamented, "Never before has such a terror appeared in Britain as we have now suffered from a pagan race." He saw it as God's punishment. The Vikings, however, saw it as a business opportunity. Soon, Francia felt the same sting. After Charlemagne's death, his empire was torn apart by civil war between his grandsons. The Treaty of Verdun in 843 officially split the empire into 3 kingdoms, a division the Vikings would exploit masterfully. In 845, a Viking leader, possibly the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok, sailed up the Seine with over 100 ships and sacked Paris. He only left after the Frankish king, Charles the Bald, paid him 7,000 pounds of silver. This was the first major payment of what would become known as Danegeld, and it taught the Vikings a disastrous lesson. Extortion was even more profitable than raiding. Around the year 850, the game changed. The raids evolved from small summer excursions into something far more dangerous. Viking chieftains began to pool their forces into huge invasion forces, which the English chronicles called the Mikkel here, the Great Army. These armies stopped going home for the winter. Instead, they built fortified camps on enemy soil, allowing them to continue their campaigns year-round. And they learned a new trick. Upon landing, they would seize all the local horses, transforming their naval force into a terrifyingly mobile land army that could strike deep inland. The ultimate expression of this new strategy landed in England in the autumn of 865. The great heathen army, led by the sons of Ragnar Lothbrok like the cunning Ivar the Boneless, arrived not just to raid, but to conquer. Over the next decade, they systematically dismantled the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. First, they took horses and wintered in East Anglia. Then, in 866, they marched north and captured the great city of York, exploiting a civil war to crush the kingdom of Northumbria. In 869, they returned to East Anglia, killing its king, Edmund, who would later be revered as a saint. Next, they conquered the powerful central kingdom of Mercia, driving its king into exile. By 874, only one Anglo-Saxon kingdom remained independent, Wessex in the south, and it was on the brink of collapse. In the winter of 878, the Vikings launched a surprise attack that forced the King of Wessex, a young man named Alfred, to flee into the swamps of Somerset as a fugitive in his own kingdom. The fate of England hung by a thread, but Alfred was not defeated. Hiding in the marshes, he rallied his loyal followers and waged a guerrilla war. In May of 878, he emerged, gathered his army, and met the Vikings at the Battle of Edington. After a brutal, day-long shield wall clash, Alfred's forces smashed the great army and sent them fleeing. The victory was decisive. It saved England. In the peace treaty that followed, the Viking leader Guthrum even agreed to be baptized, with Alfred as his godfather. The treaty established a formal boundary, carving out a vast territory in the north and east of England where Danish law would rule. This territory would forever be known as the Danelaw. As Alfred was fighting for his kingdom's life, a similar epic struggle was unfolding across the Channel. In 885, a massive Viking fleet, supposedly hundreds of ships strong, sailed up the Seine to attack Paris. The city, mostly situated on a defensible island, was protected by two critical bridges. The defense was led by the heroic Count Odo of Paris. With only a few hundred warriors, he faced a Viking army of thousands. The siege lasted for nearly a year. The Vikings attacked with siege towers and battering rams. The defenders fought back with hot oil and pitch. The city held, but it was starving. Finally, the Emperor Charles the Fat arrived with a massive imperial army. The defenders of Paris expected a glorious final battle. Instead, Charles the Fat refused to fight. He paid the Vikings 700 pounds of silver and, in a stunning act of betrayal, gave them permission to sail past Paris to plunder the region of Burgundy. The Parisians were disgusted. Charles the Fat's reputation was destroyed, and he was deposed a year later, shattering the Carolingian Empire for good. But the hero Count Odo was elected as the new king by the nobles. His family would eventually found a new dynasty, the Capetians, the future kings of France. The great invasions of the late 9th century marked another turning point. The focus for many Vikings shifted from plunder to permanent settlement. The raiders were putting down roots. In England, the Danelaw became a vibrant, hybrid society. Viking warriors married Anglo-Saxon women, and their language and culture fused. This is why the English language today is filled with Old Norse words like sky, egg, knife, husband, and even the pronoun they. Place names ending in by for village or thorp for farmstead still mark the map of northern England. But the kings of Wessex, starting with Alfred the Great, began a slow, methodical reconquest. Alfred built a network of fortified towns called burhs and a small navy. His children, Edward and Ethelflad, the Lady of the Mercians, continued his work, gradually rolling back the Danelaw's frontiers until the last Viking kingdom of York was finally absorbed into a newly unified kingdom of England in 954. In Francia, the story took a different path. The Viking leader Rollo had been terrorizing the Seine Valley for years. The Frankish king, Charles the Simple, knew he couldn't defeat him militarily. So in 911, he made Rollo a radical offer. In exchange for peace, conversion to Christianity, and a promise to defend the river from other Vikings, Charles would grant Rollo the lands around the city of Rouen as his own duchy. Rollo accepted. He and his Northmen became the Normans. Within a generation, they had adopted the French language and Christian faith. There's a famous story about the ceremony. Rollo was told he had to kiss the king's foot as a sign of homage. He refused. As a compromise, one of his warriors was told to do it for him. The warrior strode forward, but instead of kneeling, he grabbed the king's foot and lifted it to his mouth, tipping King Charles the Simple right over onto his back, to the roaring laughter of the Vikings. It was a perfect symbol of the arrangement, a nominal act of submission that was really a power play. And this new Duchy of Normandy would have staggering consequences for history. So what was the ultimate legacy of this 300-year age of terror? It's a story of creative chaos. The Vikings were undoubtedly destroyers. They brought death, fear, and economic collapse. But their constant pressure forced the societies they attacked to adapt or die. In England, the Vikings destroyed every Anglo-Saxon kingdom except one. This allowed Alfred and his successors to unite the survivors and forge the fragmented lands into the single kingdom of England. The Vikings were the unwitting godfathers of England. In Francia, the pressure had the opposite effect. The monarchy's failure to stop the raids shattered the Carolingian Empire, leading to the decentralized, feudal world of medieval France. But from that chaos, the heroes of the resistance, like Count Odo of Paris, rose to create a new French dynasty. And perhaps the greatest irony of all? 155 years after Rollo was granted his duchy, his direct descendant, a man named William the Conqueror, would lead the Normans across the Channel in 1066 to conquer the very English kingdom that had been forged in the fight against his own Viking ancestors, bringing the entire story full circle. The Northmen came as a terror from the sea, but they left a world remade in their wake. So what are your thoughts on this? Let us know down in the comments below. If you found this interesting or learned something new, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to 10-Minute History for more deep dives. Thanks for listening.